or done by the celebrant. This is a mandatory part of the service for anybody who is having a bar bat mitzvah. So they face the ark, face the congregation for Shema Nachad, then they turn and face the ark for Gadlu, and then walk and start out on the right side of the aisle and then come back around to the left side, going slow enough so people can stop and kiss the Torah, taking the talit and touching it, or if one does not wear a talit, they can take their book and touch it and kiss it. Another thing that's rather interesting too, you know, we have the tradition of kissing the Torah. Not everybody does that. You know, founding rabbi used to look at things as amulets and not necessarily important to kiss it. You know, that in other religions we find parallels. Find in Catholicism they kiss the rosary. So there are a lot of very, very interesting similarities, but not everybody does that. Well, not everybody goes through that process of kissing it too. That's something that we feel comfortable in terms of the tradition here now. But again, we're not going to frown upon anybody who opts out. Yes?
Are we to touch the Torah
Touch it and kiss
book
it.
and then kiss it?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing for the mezuzah?
Yes.
On the door
Same for
post?
the mezuzah, same when you come up to the Torah and have an aliyah, where you take the talit, touch it, and then kiss it.
Okay.
So it's all in that particular order. So when the Torah is brought back, the Torah adornments are removed. We're going to talk about what those adornments are a little bit. And the congregation remains standing until the Torah is placed on the bimah. I look quickly to make sure that it's rolled to the right place, which it better be because I rolled it. And then we cover it, and then the rabbi follows with the Devar Torah. And then everybody is seated.
So, did I hear that right? You prepare the Torah so that it opens to the right place?
Yeah.
I always wondered how that.
Wondered who did that? Yeah, it's in the job description that I wrote for myself. Yes.
Since there are 4 Torahs there, how do you know how do you plan what one is being used, or 2 or 3? Like, is there a particular sequence or rotation or something?
Well, you always want to go with the one that's in the best condition. And that's really how we determine it. The one that was most recently written is the smaller one. That was done a number of years ago. It was one of the projects that we had, and that one is the clearest, and that's the one we use on a weekly basis. The one that was previously our main Torah is now our second Torah, and that's used for a maftir, okay, a special maftir. Now, a special maftir is done on a special holiday or special week where you actually have 2 Torahs and there's a special final passage which is read. Now, is it necessary? No. You could go through the process and roll the same Torah, but you could also shut down the service while you're trying to find it. So we always have the second one rolled to the right place, so we're ready to charge right in. There are some times where there actually may be 3 Torah scrolls that are used. You find that on Simchat Torah. If there's a Shabbat that coincides with Rosh Chodesh and Hanukkah, you're going to have 3 different readings. So there are certain times when there are 3. But 1, always, 2, often, 3, not so much. Okay? Yes?
Are you not supposed to touch the Torah scroll?
Good point. The Torah is made of parchment. Okay, so not only from the standpoint that it is holy, and that's why you use the talit when you touch it to kiss it, or you use the yad, okay, which translates to the hand, to read the Torah so that you're not physically touching it. But there's also a practical reason. When you're dealing with parchment, your fingers have oils in them. And when you touch that parchment, it can cause the ink that is on the Torah to smudge. So it can affect the longevity of the scroll if you're going to use your hand on it too. So there's certainly a practical component as well.
What is the parchment made of?
Hide. I'm not telling you to hide. Okay, let's move on. So you have on Shabbat 7 aliyot, 7 divisions. So there's 7 people called to the Torah. For the sake of those who are having a bar bat mitzvah, we really don't want to have more than 4 people called up at a time. It gets a little bit burdensome when you have that many people called up and you have people on both sides. And if Cantor's reading, you can get claustrophobic, and we don't want that to happen. The people who are honored with aliyot chant the blessings. Baruch hu et Adonai haborach. Okay, so they have the blessing before and after the second, after the reading. Then they take the corner of the talit, touch it, kiss it, and then do the blessing afterward. After the second aliyah, we read the names of all those who are ailing, and we ask people who find that people are not on the list who want to say names out loud to do so, and then I chant the recent tradition of doing Debbie Friedman's Misha Beirach, and hopefully it has some impact on those who are ailing. And the person who has the final aliyah, the maftir aliyah, is also the person who has the responsibility of chanting the Haftorah. So always, the person who has the maftir aliyah is the one who chants the Haftorah. So when you talk about the maftir is the final section, and it is always at least the repetition of the final verses of the 7th aliyah. So it's not like a reading unto itself, but it is a repetition of at least the last few lines of the 7th aliyah, or in some cases, it's identical to the 7th aliyah. The only time that it would be totally unique would be on a special Shabbat, where the maftir would be from another Torah, and then it would be disassociated from the initial reading. Yes?
You might be mentioning this, but when you say the blessing, when you're done with the blessing, you walk over to the other side and you stay there until the next reading is done. Why is it customary to do that? Oh, never mind.
I love segues. All right, so this is just when one comes up for an aliyah, you make sure you give the gabbai the full Hebrew name. For those who are having an upcoming bar bat mitzvah, I ask that you provide me with that information in advance, and I will prepare a document so we don't, sometimes people get stage fright. They walk up and you say, "What's your Hebrew name?" And they say, "Joe." You go, "No, that's actually not it." And they give their Hebrew name, and then they don't know their parents' name. And by doing a little preparation in advance, get it to me, we know who to call up, and it doesn't put anybody in an awkward situation where they don't know the names. So I ask that I can get all of that information by the Wednesday prior to that event, and I can put together the sheet. And I'm very anal about this stuff and like to have everything nice and neat and laid out and leave little to error. So I think we covered most of it, except that we ask that the person who comes up for the aliyah, and I'm going to get out of camera range, but I don't care. So people come up to the Torah, they take the talit, they touch it, kiss it, they do the first blessing, the reader reads, the reader finishes, they take the talit, they touch it, kiss it, do the bottom blessing, and then move over to the opposite side as the new people come up. So they're basically able to witness the reading for 2 different aliyot. They move over, and when they finish the second one, they shake hands and move over. So you always want to have people on both sides during the reading. We have a gabbai on each end who assist in making sure that there are no mistakes that are made, and the one who is positioned on this side also calls the people up for their aliyah. Okay? We're going to move on.
I was gently chastised once for not waiting until being called.
As long as it was gentle.
What?
As long as it was
It
gentle.
was gentle.
Yeah.
But the gabbai in that particular case wanted me to wait until I was officially,
Dismissed.
no, called up.
Oh, but wait until you were called. You were called up. You were called up at the beginning, not at the end.
Right, I was standing here, I started walking over, said, wait, and then he called me, and then I
Oh. Oh, I see. I see. Somebody wanted formality in terms of hearing your name and then you make your move.
Okay.
I don't care. Okay, that's shtick. All right. So when let's talk a little bit about the responsibility for lifting and binding the Torah. We have the congregation rise, and we have what's known as Hagba and Galila. Okay, the person who lifts is Hamagbia, and then you have Hagolel or Hagolelet, depending upon whether the person who's tying it is male or female. And the tradition is to open it to 3 columns, slide it down, and this is important that people know what they're doing when they lift the Torah, because it can put a lot of strain on the Torah. We, God forbid, don't want it tearing. And we actually had guidance from a sofer in terms of the way that he recommends that we always lift the Torah. So it's spread on the shulchan, on the table, and it is slid off a little bit. And as you know, with weightlifting, you don't try to do everything with your back and your arms, you try to use your legs. So you take it, go down like this, lift it, turn it this way so that people can actually see the words of the Torah, which is why you have it spread out to 3 columns. Turn back. Go back through the same process. Bend the knee. Put it down. Lower it. Close it. Put it on the shoulder. And then walk to the seat where it is then going to be tied up. Through that process, you don't have to worry about anybody tripping. You don't have to worry about the uneven balance of the Torah on both sides. And that is a really good way of making sure that you maintain the integrity of the scroll for a much longer time. Until the Torah is then replaced in the rack, the congregation remains standing in reverence to the Torah. Now, we have when the Torah is lifted, we have the words "V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe," basically saying, this is the Torah that Moses put before the children of Israel, according to the mouth, or according to the commandment of God, at the hand of Moses. That's what you're saying. So the Torah is closed when a person is sitting, you attach, and there are a number of names for this. You've seen the clip or the clasp that is used around the Torah. There is actually it's a German word, wimple. That's what I grew up with it being called, the wimple. In Yiddish it's Wimpel. I think in German it actually translates to a banner, which is what it's called. But then there's another word, the gartel, and in Hebrew it's called the mapah. Those are the words for what is used to clasp the Torah. It's covered with the mantle, then we attach the pointer or the yad, and then we have the rimonim, those that cover each of the posts at the top. Yes?
Yes, so when I first joined this congregation, we used breastplates also, and then at some point stops. What was the reason for that?
It's because of the mantles which were donated to the congregation, and if you put the breastplate over the mantle, you're not going to see the seasons which are shown in the front of them, and that's basically the reason. So it's one less adornment because basically the adornment has now been ingrained into the mantle. Haftorah, and this, I think we're doing okay. Haftorah comes from the prophets. So has anybody asked you what the Jewish Bible is? Somebody who's non-Jew?
Yeah,
What do you tell them?
it's the Torah.
You say it's the Torah?
And that's not the whole thing, is it?
That's right. Okay, and that is, you're not unique in that response. But, a lot of times, a non-Jew might refer to our Bible as the Old Testament. We don't call it the Old Testament. Okay? It's our Bible. Okay, so if you don't believe in something that's new, you're not going to distinguish between new and old. Right? And it's not all that's contained. Our Bible is known as Tanakh, which is an acronym. So the Torah is the first part, the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. Okay, but then you have Tanakh, Nevi'im, which is prophets, and then Ketuvim, which is the last part of the acronym from Tanakh, and that refers to writings. So that could be the Megillah, the Book of Ruth, the Psalms, all of the different writings. So put them all together, that's our Bible, the Tanakh. So you have now the ability to correct some people if they think that, our Bible is strictly, from Genesis through Deuteronomy, which it is not. Okay, we return the Torah to the ark after the Haftorah. The prayer for peace I mentioned is something where we allow non-Jews to participate. So there are actually 2 ark openings. The ark opening as the Torah is taken out. The ark opening as the Torah is put back. Those are honors that can be given to people in a bar bat mitzvah. So you can have your guests or relatives participate in that. We have Ashrei. Then the congregation rises as the recessional begins. And I mentioned that the Torah will be carried on the left side and then come up the right. And again, people will kiss the Torah. We sing Eitz Chaim Hi, which is on page 184. We can take a look at that very quickly. Okay, and this is where we compare the Torah to a tree of life. So when you say Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazikim Ba, it's a tree of life for those who adhere to it. Okay, so that is, there's a song about that, but it comes directly from this reference. And then we begin the additional service, the Musaf service. And after the Musaf service, we have Ein Kelohenu, where we say, there is none like our God, which based upon our reasons to pray, where would that fit?
Crazy.
You got it. All right. And then we have Aleinu, where the ark is opened. And normally that is an ark opening that is given to a congregant as opposed to a guest of the bar bat mitzvah. However, if you are running short of honors, I know people and I can actually give that to you. Then we have the mourner's Kaddish at the end. We have the closing hymn, Adon Olam, which is often done by celebrants and has been done to many, many different melodies, many of them secular. So probably going to start the contest again and have you stump the cantor and throw some other melodies at me and see if I can adapt it. That actually, you know, the idea of taking that particular hymn and using secular melodies was actually Hasidic. This is something that was done in the past. It's not something that I made up. Now, some of the melodies I made up, but the tradition.
Long, tall salad.
Oh, ouch. Okay, I'll see what I can do with that. At the end of the service, we do the Kiddush, and that's on page 77. And we start out with Vishamru, which talks about the significance of Shabbat in our lives. So the importance and the tradition of honoring the Sabbath as part of our ritual observance. And then we say the blessing over the wine. And finally, the blessing over the bread, which allows us to eat. And that is the conclusion of the overview of the Shabbat service. Question?
Why does the Kaddish appear so many times in the service?
It's really the whole concept of constantly affirming one's belief. And the more you say it, the more you believe it. And that applies, as I told you, not only for mourners, but for non-mourners as well. Because you know something, it's not unusual that there are different times in our lives where we start to have some doubts. So when you get together on Shabbat or for other services, that's the time of introspection, and these are the kinds of things that just help us reaffirm our belief. Yes?
Just a comment on that. I had also heard, and maybe you can comment on this, that it's used sort of as punctuation in the service. For instance, the Torah service is surrounded by the Kaddish Shalem, and
It's good.
it delineates the section.
That's right. It is a delineation of the various component parts of the service. So, in other words, it's surrounding every part of it with words of praise. You know, so we don't forget what we're doing. Yes?
Okay, so you come to services, you're sitting there, and the Gabbai asks you to open the ark to put the Torah back. When are you supposed to open it? When do you close it? And after you close it, what do you do?
Okay. All right, so you get to the page of the Torah service. You walk up and you stand on both sides of the ark. You get to, I think it's on 164. It's 168, where as soon as we finish Adon Olamim, congregation rises, and at that particular point for Vayehi bin Soharon, you open the ark. Okay, and then before the singing of the Shema, Echad, and Gadlu, when the Torah is taken out and handed to me or to the celebrant, they come up and they take it and we say, close the ark, and then the person turns and is singing Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, and after they finish with Gadlu, they walk around, the ark remains closed. Okay. And then
If the people who open it just
they walk away. As a matter of fact, they can walk away when the procession begins. So that way it's not all obvious, all eyes are on the Torah moving. It's a natural time to depart. Okay, and then when the when we're going to have the return, the ark is open, you sing Yahalelu, the person walks around again with the procession, comes up, the Torah is put back in the ark. After the chanting of Eitz Chaim Hi, then the ark is closed, the people depart, and then we begin the Musaf service. Okay? Any other questions? I thank you very much. It is almost a perfect hour, and obviously